Good morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it is the 6th day of November 2024, the day after Election Day. And I want to say to everyone who voted for the rightful president of the United States, whose rights were violated in 2020, congratulations on the way the election went. But also, I'm also gonna say we have work to do, and I think this is where the vetting comes in, because I quite honestly think that it was really a big celebration for everyone last night. That's fantastic. We know the way that most of us have the perception that it went. However, with that said, I think we've got some work to do. And I don't know about you, but I was like Kamala didn't concede last night. And I think that we're in for a bumpy ride here this week. So kind of like brace for impact a little bit. Don't take this for granted. Just because we got in and we were fighting and it feels like there's a win there doesn't mean that this is so clear cut, because I think right now celebrate the victory as far as, you know, how it went, but realize unless we have honest elections where the integrity is bomb proof, which we do not. We had I think it's the Uokava vote. We were supposed to have 2 million of them. 4 million of them came back. We are going to have to get these elections cleaned up. And so the fight is not done. And I think we're going to find out right now that we're going to be separating the men from the boys right now on whether people decide to go home, get apathetic, say, we won, great, President Trump, now fix all of our problems. Right. Which is the wrong answer and the wrong response under any circumstances whatsoever. Either we step up and say, how can we help? Number one, and number two, the fight's not done yet. They're going to come back, and they're going to come back with a vengeance. My guess is that it may be an economic crash. There's going to be retribution for this. These people are not going to go away without a fight. And so I guess what I'm saying to everybody is, this is great. Let's celebrate. That's fine. But you better be girding yourselves strongly right now and be ready to step up. This is not a fight we walk away from. This is to the last breath, till the last kid is found, till CPS is eradicated off this planet for the child trafficking, for the cheating, for the theft, for all the other crap that they've pulled. We are not done. This is where probably the biggest part of the fight is going to be.
Yeah. And just because you like the result of something doesn't mean that the faulty process is allowable. You know, they cheated the last election. They cheated this election. We've got, you know, there's piles of evidence of it. They've cheated probably every election for the last nearly 100 years. And we need to put a stop to that still. Regardless of what the outcome is, we still have to fight for the integrity of that process.
The American process.
Yep. And no matter what the result is, whether you like the result or you dislike the result, we still have to fix this. The problem is still there. The thing we have to keep in mind now is we might potentially have some new allies to help us in this fight. And the question is right now is, can everyone that's been in this fight swallow their pride enough to be able to accept these new allies that we should be trying to recruit? Because it is their fight. They just haven't been helping us. And maybe now they will.
We're no better than them.
Right.
If we accept this, because I believe that President Trump won this fair and square. No problem. You know, let's prove it to them. Let's get in there and prove it to them, because in the last election, they didn't want to look at it. They didn't want to bring the truth out. You know what? You only have to worry about the truth, about hiding the results if it's not true. Let's prove it. Let's get in there and make this thing right, and not do what they did in the last election. Let's prove it. Let's prove the truth out, and not hide anything. Throw it out there, because I'm pretty sure we throw all of this out there, we're going to find all the cheating, bring it out into the light. And I'm going to tell you what, I was out last night, and this is going to be crazy, but I want to put it out there because I'm suspecting something. Okay. I was headed out to grab something for dinner. In the car, one of my sons was with me, and we saw there were cops that had different cars and different things pulled over. And it was unusual for Byron Township at, I think it was around, I'm going to say 8 o'clock last night, 8 o'clock last night. And in one of the neighborhoods, it was really very weird. There was a neighborhood that had a Brinks truck pulled over with a cop had a Brinks truck pulled over. At that late of a time at night, this Brinks truck is pulled over. And I'm sitting here going, on election night, with all of the ballots and crap, nobody, I'm not saying they're guilty. I'm just saying I've never seen this in my life, have a cop pull over a Brinks truck, especially later at night. What the hell was in that truck is what I want to know, because their cheating has gone into white panel trucks. There were a bunch of them that showed up in Pennsylvania. We had cheating like crazy. It was honestly, at this point in time, it looks like it's too big to rig. We outperformed them. However, with that said, we need to prove it to them and throw this thing out in the light, and not just try to hide it because this is the way we wanted it to go, to Ralph's point. We need to prove it. And then there were 2 other cars that were pulled over. They had 2 other cars pulled over. There was some weird stuff that happened last night across the United States. And until we fix this, what if we don't fix it, they're going to just look at this and they're going to come back in the next election, and they're going to take advantage of all the vulnerabilities because they know it. They know where they are now. And so it's time to right this for America.
I said last night that people should be thinking about this like a COVID test as we were going along, because who cares what it is, because it's all fake. You can't trust it. You can't trust it, then it doesn't matter who wins or loses, really. And yeah, I'm celebrating with everybody else. I think it's nice to be able to take a breath, and like Ralph was saying before the show started, the anticipation is a part of it, and I think there's a relief and a renewed sense of hope. And I think the people needed that. But at the same time, I agree. I think that we're going to see some shenanigans today. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest bit. I don't know. I was up till 3:30 last night, so I haven't seen anything this morning. I don't know if they've called Michigan or if they've not called Michigan.
I don't think so.
Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia, definitely there was some stuff going on last night. They didn't want to call Pennsylvania even with 90-something%. California, I think they called as soon as the polls closed. So it's you see some repeated patterns from 2020 happening. And the public who was aware then or have been made aware for the last 4 years are going to see, like, hey, didn't that happen the last time? This isn't right. One of my followers pointed out, and I shared the screenshots, that in Michigan, Trump's popular vote count went down at one point. And how can you do that? If there's no legitimate explanation for that, then that means there's definitely a thing happening probably in the machines. So there's all kinds of stuff that could be happening if she didn't concede yet and he didn't actually declare. I mean, he was celebrating, but I don't know that he actually said, I'm the winner, this is great. I think it's because they probably both know that it's not over yet. We didn't win until he's in the office, really. And we've got some theories, like could they put him behind bars? Later this month, he's supposed to be sentenced. This is going to be a roller coaster ride in a long haul. And people, like you said, have got to gird themselves up. I think it's great to take a moment and say, okay, we won that battle because as he said in his speech last night, we have the mandate. The people have spoken. We all know now for sure that we didn't like what was happening in the last 4 years. We want Trump back. Whatever that means to you, I think it means he represents us and we want our power back. But we can see that the people want that.
Too big to rig. And that was the point here, is that whenever you're in something like this, you've got to outperform them. And how many people got out to vote? The amount of people that were voting. And look at the wins we've had. Remember, like, even 10 years ago, 5 years ago, people did not want to talk about their political views. They did not want to get involved. They felt like it was hopeless. And so the biggest win right now that I can see coming out of this whole thing is we've got an engaged public, and they are willing to talk about things, to go through the process, to reason this out. But I think that we all realize that this is the beginning of the change. And we're going to have to step up. What was very disturbing in our area, and you might have seen it, Bill, was that, and I've got some questions about this. Why is it that there were in the judicial races, everybody was running uncontested? Why is it in Byron Township, our supervisor and Peggy Sattler, the down ballot candidates here, there's people here that have broken the law, okay, flat out. The last election cycle, they've broken the law down ballot. How come they were running uncontested? That's my question. And it was like over 50% of our ballot was basically one name on the ballot. Why is this that the other people didn't even make it on the ballot? Why is it that nobody else ran, or were they kept out? We don't know that right now. And how many races down ballot didn't have the overwhelming support as President Donald J. Trump, the rightful president of the United States? Why is it? Because he was attacked so brutally. People got sick of seeing the injustice and realizing that this could happen to any one of us. But look at all the people down ballot. We do not have a clear-cut answer on who won or lost because there was so much cheating. And I'm going to tell you what, I will not do what the Democrats, what the Marxists did in the last election. Because if we do that, we're just as bad as them. You can't go, yay, sports team, even though we know they were cheating, but it's okay. We won anyway. Yay. Mm-hmm. Woo, we won. Things are all right now, right? Well, if you've got a president such as Donald J. Trump that has stepped up and said that this is what he's going to do, that's fantastic. It's a great battle to win. It is. Only it's not a win if they were cheating, no matter which side it's on. This is a win when we protect the process and hold all of these people that showed up, that didn't do the right thing, accountable. And Lev says this morning, Detroit had the white vans and cars show up with ballots again around 3 a.m. This is not done. And you know what? And you know what? And I'm going to make a statement right now. And I'm going to ask everybody who's out there watching and you guys to make a comment. And I'm going to have you think about it. I'm not going to ask you to do it right now. But until the last child is found, until the last child trafficker is prosecuted, until the last violation of the law is brought to light and the processes are righted that we have, I will not back down, and I will be fighting this with my last breath until the last illegal that's here is dealt with in a lawful manner, be it that they are prosecuted as the murderers that they are, and or the innocent ones that were trafficked and taken away without, you know, under the guise of illegals, putting them in the basket, but they're victims. Until this thing is righted before God with God's good purposes, until the last person is saved from the evil that's in this world, until evil is destroyed and completely destroyed, I will not stop fighting.
So there's a good point. And a lot of people like to call themselves patriots, and I don't think they understand what a true patriot is. If you go back in the early days, you'll find that the definition of patriot is somebody who loves his country and zealously supports and defends it and its interests, right? Or somebody devoted to the welfares of one's country. An example of that Noah Webster used was a comment to say, "Such tears as patriots shed for dying laws." A patriot is one who upholds laws and upholds the rule of laws and doesn't get confounded or sucked into this whole idea of these pretended laws being created that are legitimately attacking the people. You had just mentioned something about a little bit different police cars now. And I found something this week that I had not seen. I knew it existed, but I had not seen it in my area. This has never showed up before. And I'm sure you've seen them. They're cars, typically white, that are branded with blue letters, police, and then have the blue stripe across the back of them. They're labeled as Federal Protection Services, right? The FPS was created years ago, basically to police federal buildings that our legislatures in the states have allowed the federal government to set up, right? However, that is no longer the case. I don't know if anybody knows who actually runs the FPS anymore. Does anybody know?
Mm-hmm.
Nope.
Okay, that's the Department of Homeland Security. All those police cars with a blue stripe. In 2009, the entire FPS organization was transferred to the Department of Homeland Security. And the four of us on this channel know that the Department of Homeland Security cannot exist. That department is no less than what Hitler had set up in Germany. And I forget the name of whatever they called it, but it was something very similar.
It's an occupying entity that has no right or jurisdiction over we the people.
Yeah. And that's the point that I'm trying to make, is we have to be the discerner of what is law. And I'm going to say I have not seen any administration in my lifetime that understands what law is, let alone where it comes from, right? Because law does not come from our legislation, right? I don't call them lawmakers for a reason. I actually fought with my father on that point for a long time. We like to call our legislators lawmakers for some reason, and they're not making laws. All they're doing is legislating in accordance with law, right? So if we're going to call ourselves patriots, we have to understand where this law is that we're protecting, right? Where does it come from? Does it come from our state statutes? Does it come from departmental policies? Does it come from our constitutions even? And I will say no to all of that. It most certainly does not come from any of that. And in my lifetime alone, I have watched more laws be torn down and destroyed than I have any proper ones set up. And it saddens me to even watch that happen. One that I use as an example all the time in the state of Michigan in my lifetime, it used to be a punishable offense, a misdemeanor, if a man was caught swearing in front of women or children. That's not in the state of Michigan in my lifetime. There is no reason why that law should have been torn down, right? A lot of people say, oh, well, you know, everybody cusses, everybody swears. I'm saying, no, they don't. When I was saved, that was taken away from me. I have no desire for such things, and I have no desire to continue communications with those people who constantly put that out. You know, I can tolerate a little bit, but But that law was in place for a reason, and that was to keep the morality of the people in check. Because, as I mentioned in the Supreme Court case in Pennsylvania in 1850, the destruction of morality renders the powers of government invalid. If the people become immoral and do not uphold the laws that are given to them, right, or that they have established as man's law, the government has absolutely zero authority on how to process transgressions or to process or punish the wicked, right? And if you can't do that, then the purpose of government is completely eradicated. There's no cause for government if it cannot do the simplest things in relation to justice. And you were just talking about that. We can't go to sleep here. You know, it's November 6th, right? We cannot go to sleep as we watched the majority of the evangelists and the churches do across this country in 2016. You cannot close your eyes to what's happening and say it's all going to be okay now. Because
yeah, we won. Let's go home. We can't do that.
If the people do not stand up and take this to the end, guess what? In 4 years, you're going to do this exact same thing again, and either everybody's going to be in an uproar because you know the Democrat Party. I don't care which party it is anymore. I don't care if the Libertarian Party gets in there, right? You put whatever party, whatever person you want in whatever office. They are not our leaders. I am so sick of hearing people say that. We do not have leaders in this country. And it's that idea that people misinterpret Romans 13 to say we have to be subject to them. We are not subject to anyone in this government. The people are the government. Read our constitutions. Almost every state constitution expounds on that to say that the government, the sole power of government and the powers that be rest inherently in the people themselves, which means they are servants. They are not rulers, leaders, kings, or any type of nobility that we have to bow the knee to, right? So am I glad to see Trump in office? Not really. I'll admit that. Is it better than what we had? Yeah, probably. You know, it's going to save me a few dollars here and there, but that's the least of my concerns. The bigger point is, as I did in Trump's last presidency, I called for Trump's impeachment numerous times. But I said during these two fake impeachments that they were trying to pull in Trump, I don't even remember what they were. One was about Russia, right? Russia and the elections. And the other one I don't even care about. Both of them were false and valid, complete waste of the people's time and money.
Tremendous.
Right? And the legislature's energy or Congress's energy. It was a waste of time. It was a giant show, right? Just to keep the people entertained. But there are numerous points in his last administration that were impeachable offenses. Right? And nobody wants to talk about those. Right? One was the bump stock. Right? The ATF didn't do that. Congress didn't do that. That was Trump. I'm not going to let that one slide. We are to impeach for the smallest offenses. That way it teaches our servants, you will not violate our rights or our Constitution. You will not usurp authority over that which we have given to you. And we see it being done constantly. So am I happy about it? Not really, but I can live with it, right? Because what I do is not going to change. I don't care who's in office. I don't care if, I don't even have a good example, right? But the best person you could think of to be in office, I don't care who it is, you put them in office, I'm still going to hold them to the same standard as I would Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Obama, everybody, Clinton.
There's the point.
They all hold the same standard.
It's holding them accountable because, and I want everybody to think about this, this global machine is so vast and so corrupt, and people are being blackmailed, coerced, or holding their kids kind of hostage and that sort of thing. We have to be active in the lives of even a good person is going to come up against so much pushback that we have to be there, not only holding them accountable, but defending them if they're doing something right and saying, we will stand with you. You're not standing alone here just to take all the shots. And further, another point that's come up here is that we cannot and ought not to be looking at the government as a vending machine service to serve everything. What can I get out of this government? This is wrong. And unfortunately, a lot of people are voting and they're voting for what can I get out of this rather than constraint of the government, where we solve the problems and not expect them to be the ones to solve all our problems. It's always going to go poorly there. And I want to challenge every single person out there to say, look into it. Let's look into this election integrity. If we won, honestly, we got nothing to be afraid of. We don't have to be afraid about proving our point. Let's do what they never did and prove it. Let's throw this thing wide open and find out where else they were cheating and who was cheating and how they were cheating and why they were cheating, and prosecute these people, and then prove out the fact that we actually won. Because I'm going to just say it as a Trump supporter. I'm a President Trump supporter. He took on one heck of a beast and put himself out there in front of all of us. And I'm going to say right now, there's nobody on the planet that could have done the things that he did and the policies that he had with everything so stacked against him and come out perfect. It's not possible, right? But he stood up there. When people stand in office because the corruption is so bad, I'm thankful that people are willing to go in there and fight. I'm just going to say that right now. It is our problem and our fault if they fall down, because we either didn't hold them accountable or we weren't there to help defend them when things went awry. But I am a complete advocate right now of let's go out there and prove it. Let's prove it to them. And anybody we're standing on the high ground right now. We outperformed them. We don't really have anything to worry about. And I don't know about you, but I don't think hiding things just because we've got a win in our pocket is an okay thing to walk away from. Let's prove it to them. Let's unite the United States in truth and transparency and honesty. And that way we will all be able to stand together and not have to fight. But it's coming. They're not going to stop. And I think that what the celebration last night, though it gave everybody a break from the stress, gave everybody time to feel good about it, and that's fantastic. But you better be ready for what's coming, because they aren't going to just lay down and let this thing go.
Like I said before we got on here too, and Karen kind of brought this up, I've got a little bit of a sense of relief right now, not probably for the same reason as a lot of people, but it's because the anticipation of a fight is much worse than the actual fight in a lot of cases. And that's kind of where I'm at right now, is the anticipation is over. The fight is upon us now. And
it's like getting a medical diagnosis.
Yeah. And so now we need to stand up for this and start fixing stuff, because like you said too, was this, even if you agree with the outcome of that one race, what about the rest of the races? I mean, you look at the judicial candidates in this election were absolutely terrible. There was a grand total of, I think, one judicial candidate that I voted for in the primaries that made it through to the general election. And I think probably, I'm going to say maybe 60 or 70% of the judicial candidates that were on the ballot in my area were ones that were appointed by Gretchen Whitmer.
And they were running unopposed. I mean,
yes. Almost all of the judicial candidates on my ballot were running unopposed. One of them that was running unopposed currently has an active petition against her from a group that is the victims of, they call themselves the victims of whatever this judge was, because she was a probate judge, and she ripped so many families apart, took kids away from so many people, and is accused of having like favorite attorneys that come to her that she sides with most of the time. I mean, there's so much of this that the local races, the county races, you know, when you start looking into those were a mess on this election. And so regardless of the presidential election, if you're not looking at those other candidates and those other races, that is where the biggest mess of this election was, in my opinion.
So let me expound on that a little bit, Ralph. So I ran back in 2020 for a trustee position in my township, right? Because I realized that the people that were there, though their intents were good and there wasn't a whole lot I was finding them doing wrong, but I realized there's so much more that could be done right, right? The people that were there were not acting strong enough on behalf of people to get done what we should have been doing. So I ran in 2020 for that. And that was the only time I really campaigned. I went out door knocking during COVID shutdowns, right? I'm not bragging. I'm using this as an example. During COVID shutdowns, I went out talking to people, shaking their hands, handing them stuff, getting to know people that normally, you know, that's not my thing. I don't need to know a lot of people. In fact, I don't like crowds. But I did it because I knew something had to be done and nobody else was willing to stand up and do it. The point of that, in our little township of 4,700 people and 3,000 actual voters that are registered, there was one person out of that mass that ever came up to me. It looked at his ballot prior and came up to me, came to my house and knocked on my door, right? Nobody else came. Nobody else called. Nobody else even questioned who I was or what I was doing, right? That's sad. That was in 2020. Fast forward 2022, I ran for state board, our local, or not state, I ran for school board, a local school district out here. Same thing happened, right? There was one person who came to talk to me. There were a couple who knew who I was and promoted that. But even the appointed or hired employees of the school board, namely the superintendent, actually came out and publicly attacked me, right? Me and another guy that were kind of running together, opposite parties, by the way. It's not a partisan race, but we were part of opposite parties, but we had common ground because we were both running on constitutional principles, and that was it. Didn't matter what parties we were from. But I was actually attacked publicly on Justin Barkley's show, believe it or not. By
Justin attacked me too, so there you go.
Superintendent of the school, right? That's how bad it got. And I didn't campaign. I never put my name out there except for one flyer that he wanted both of our pictures and principles. Bring that up to this election. Once again, my name was on the ballot for Wayne State Board of Governors. I voted
for you. I voted for you, Bill.
I just filled a seat. That's all I did, right? I ran no campaign. I had no intent of taking the office, but in fact, I don't want it. Okay, I will flat out admit that. But if the people wanted to put me there, I would sacrifice everything and go do it, because that shows that the people have put trust and favor in somebody that didn't want the office. And I'm willing to sacrifice whatever needs be on behalf of the people that put me there. That is the difference between a politician and a statesman, right? Just to make that point. To finish that point, though, out of all those races, this one, not one person ever came up to me and talked to me, right? Until the day of election. Everybody went out to their voting polls, and they looked at their ballot, and the people that knew me ended up calling me or sending me a text message and say, "Hey, I didn't even know your name was on the ballot." It's like, "I just want to let you know I voted for you." And I was like, that's the point. You didn't research. You just condemned yourself because you didn't research who was on your ballot before you even got there, right? That was the whole point of me putting my name in that position. And I couldn't tell you how many people did that. And it was incredible. We attend a local church out here, okay? And they actually have a voter guide, right, put on by the Nuevo Republican Party. So I don't agree with the majority of the people that they put on that voter guide, right? And I made that very clear to several people there. However, the guy that has been in that church for well over a year and is serving in every capacity that is ever asked. Guess whose name was not on that voter's guide? My name was not on that voter's guide. Why? Because it was a partisan play by the people and they bought into it. Not one person in that church even knew I was running. And even post-election now, not one person has come up and said, hey, I didn't know you were on the ballot. I voted for you anyway, right? So this is going to be kind of fun to go back and actually see what is being said, because I'm not letting that one slide. The point is, you got to get in there. You got to do your research. You got to know who these people are. If you can't vouch for them, you best not be putting a check mark by their name, right? Because if you go back to Exodus 18, where God had set up the government for the Israelites and told them how to do it, they were to select from among their brethren, not strangers. They could not put a stranger and rule over them, right? They were to select from the brethren, people that they knew and people could vouch for their character, their morals, and their integrity before they could even be put in a position such as that. And then in Exodus 18:21, you'll find the 4 characteristics of people who are supposed to be put into an office of any authority, right? So, yeah, that's my rant this election, right? I did that on purpose, and it is just very telling to the people, and I'm hoping some hearts are open and some eyes are open to that fact, so that way we don't have to do it in 26 when we come up to the governor's race, right? Because that's going to be a whole nother mess that has to be dealt with that didn't get dealt with last time, because we know in Michigan that Whitmer was not elected by the people here either. It's no different. Right? Happens federal, state, and local level. Yet everyone's focused on the federal level over 4 years and leaves the state and the local levels out. The state and the local levels is where we're going to make this change, right? That is where we hold to the law. That is where we can make the most difference. I was reading William Blackstone. Phenomenal guy. I love reading his stuff, right? And Karen, I'm sure you being in some of the common law groups, that you should know a lot about William Blackstone.
I don't.
He was a phenomenal writer when it came to common law and English law. He actually called himself, because he wasn't a politician by any means, though he served at the Court of Commons, and I think he was a member of Parliament for some time as well. He did not call himself a politician, but he is actually quoted as describing himself amid the rage of contending parties, a man of moderation. He didn't play the party politics. He was a man who could reasonably think through things. And regarding the whole rule of law, right? We're a republic. We're not a democracy. Any politician who stands up there and says we're a democracy should be impeached because they haven't read the Constitution, let alone understand it. Okay, they just get that right out. That's a huge way to get rid of a lot of people that are doing wrong. We're a republic. That means we are ruled by law. The law is set in place. That's the standard, and that is what should be held to. So William Blackstone, I'll read some of this because I don't have the time. There's numerous pages. But on his commentaries of the laws of England, he had written that law in its most general and comprehensive sense signifies a rule of action and is applied indiscriminately to all kinds of action, whether animate or inanimate, rational or irrational. Thus we say the laws of motion, of gravitation, of optics, or mechanics, as well as the laws of nature and the laws of nations. It is that rule of action which is prescribed by some superior in which the inferior is bound to obey, right? Let's flip that. How do we have that in America? Who is the superior in America and who is the inferior who is bound to obey the law? Because from what I see, the inferior is not the people. The people are the superior, and the government is the inferior. If you read through the Constitution, it's not "thou shalt not" to the people. There's no law against an action of the people within our U.S. Constitution, but rather there are numerous laws that the government itself are bound to obey that the people have put in place, right? Thus, when the supreme being formed the universe, go read the Declaration of Independence, clarifies this, and created matter out of nothing, he impressed certain principles upon the matter from which it can never depart, and without which it would cease to be. When he put that matter into motion, he established the certain laws of motion to which all movable bodies must conform, and to descend from the greatest operations to the smallest. When a workman forms a clock or other piece of mechanism, he establishes at his own pleasure certain arbitrary laws for its discretion, as that the hand shall describe a given space and given time, to which law, as long as the work conforms, so long it continues in perfection and answers the end of its formation. He goes on to say the laws of nature, being coeval with mankind and dictated by God himself, is of course superior in obligation to any other. It is binding all over the globe, in all countries and at all times. No human laws are of any validity if contrary to this. And such of them as are valid derive all their force and all their authority immediately or immediately from this original. During 2020 and 2021, I sent out numerous, I don't even know what to call them, basically questionnaires. I sent out numerous questionnaires, especially in 2020. Every candidate that was on the ballot received a questionnaire specific to their office from me. Right? That takes a lot of time. And I would suggest not trying to do that alone. It's better if you form a committee or a group that is willing to tackle that every time in every precinct for every person, right? It makes life a whole lot easier. But nonetheless, everybody received a questionnaire. On that questionnaire, everybody was asked the same question: where do laws come from? Right? Just simple. I just wanted to feel out where people think that the laws we are bound to obey in this country and government. I want to know where they think those laws come from. And without fail, every single one of them pointed to the legislators, that they are the final arbitrary creator and dissolver of all laws. Isn't that interesting?
Until your corrupt justice system gets in.
Oh, here we go. Yeah. Because Blackstone also talked about that. Let's see. I was supposed to put a mark there, and I failed to put a mark.
Actually, I had a good conversation the other day, too, with some people about how the Senate is not elected properly, and there's supposed to be a time-delayed version of the will of the people, so that you don't have this kind of utter chaos every time that you've got the elections.
So, yeah, on that note, quick question. What does the Senate represent in every legislature and Congress, for that matter? What does the Senate represent?
Government.
Okay.
What do they represent? Or what are they supposed
answers.
to represent?
Yeah, when they legislate from their office, who are they representing?
Who are they, or who should they be?
Either or.
Because the representatives, we'll put it that way to make it a little easier, they represent the people. The Senate basically represent the government.
Represents the state, doesn't it? It represents the state because it's an equal representation between all of the states, and they aren't supposed to be directly voted in. It's supposed to be a vote by the House, not the people, and that we really got screwed up with that, so that they were a balance. It's a balance. I mean, when you think about the balancing that was happening with the checks and balance, it's another balance.
That is
so once again, if we're celebrating a victory, oh hey, we got so and so into the Senate. We have control of the Senate. No, you don't.
Shouldn't
not
have.
supposed to.
It's like so many other things. Well, this agency did something. Well, that agency doesn't exist, right?
What were you going to say, Bill?
Exactly. But that is exactly correct. Being that the people are electing senators just shows you how convoluted and how far from the original principles that it was set up. There's a reason why we have a divided legislation, a divided House, right? And that is because the people will always fight with, flip that.
It is because the state will always fight with the people over power, right? The founders knew this. So to make sure there was a divided power that could always counter each other, one is a House of Representatives that the people elect out of their own districts, right? Their brethren, people they know.
Local.
And then there is the Senate. The Senate represents the state and the state's interest. That is it. The House represents the people and the people's interest. That is it, right? Both are bound by the same law. Tell me, how can we have countering sides to this, right? You look at, the Democrat-Republican parties, which don't exist in the House or the Senate. They only exist outside pre-election. When you're in there, you now either represent the people or the state. You don't represent your party anymore.
You're supposed to, but that's not the way that it works. And that's the problem.
That's the problem.
That is the problem. It's like, if you're a Republican, you lay that down when you get in there. I mean, that's how you get in. But after that point, you should be representing all people in a very balanced way.
And that's why one of my phrases in 2019, when everyone was talking about bipartisan legislation or having to work with somebody on the other side of the aisle, those terms did not compute in my head, right? And I wasn't really into politics at the time, right? I knew what should have been done. I knew it wasn't getting done, but I had no idea what I was going to do about it. So I was just kind of free floating along, doing everything I could in the meantime. But those phrases were coming from our government servants, right? And I could not wrap my head around that, because it doesn't matter which side of the aisle they were on, the aisle still travels in one direction, right? Should be traveling towards law, and in most cases it's not. It's flipped around and traveling away from the law. So that was that entire point, because there is no right or left when you are in government. There is no Republican, Democrat. There is no Constitution Party, Libertarian Party. The government is the government. You either represent the people or you need to get out. It's as simple as that. And you should willfully get out, honestly. If you just represent party politics like they do in there, you should be willfully leaving on your own accord. But if not, the people should hold you accountable, impeach you, and get rid of you, right? And then prosecute for every crime you committed. Back to Karen's point. When you talk about throwing the law out and not understanding where the foundations of law come from, that being God's moral law, right, as we just read from Blackstone, then the only other cause for being able to lawfully interpret something ends up going to the judges, right? And if you read what the founders said about the judiciary system, that was their biggest fear. But they called the judiciary system the lowest or the weakest branch of government there is. Now, how come now we're in 2024, the judiciary has actually become the most powerful branch? Because the people have allowed what they consider to be case law, which doesn't exist, right? There can only be precedent set by the court, and that determined within legal boundaries. But Blackstone, at the end of this commentary, whoa, my computer just went haywire. The end of this commentary, known as Commentaries on the Laws of England, in section 2, you'll find he says, from this method of interpreting laws, which we were just doing, by the reason of them arises what we call equity, which is thus defined by Grotius, the correction of that wherein the law, by reason of its universality, is deficient. For since in laws all cases cannot be foreseen or expressed, it is necessary that when the general decrees of the law come to be applied in particular cases, there should be somewhere a power vested in defining those circumstances, which, had they been foreseen, the legislator himself would have expressed. And these are the cases which, according to Grotius, and he says Latin there, which basically means the law does not define exactly, but leaves something to the discretion of a just and wise judge. You read in our Constitution, judges only sit there in good behavior. They're not appointed for life. The moment their behavior comes contrary to the Constitution or to the laws, bam, they are removed, or should be, right? But we have this understanding, this misinterpretation of what a Supreme Court judge is, and that they're appointed for life no matter what they do. Not the case at all. He says, equity, thus depending essentially upon a particular circumstance of the individual case, there can be no established rules and fixed precepts of equity laid down without destroying its very essence and reducing it to a positive law. And on the other hand, the liberty of considering all cases in an equitable light must not be indulged too far, lest thereby we destroy all law and leave the decision to every question entirely in the breast of the judge. Law without equity, though hard and disagreeable, is much more desirable for the public good than equity without law, which would make every judge a legislator and introduce most infinite confusion, as there would then be almost as many different rules of action laid down in our courts as there are differences of capacity and sentiment in the human mind. That is exactly what we see happening here. One example of that, and I'm glad Roe versus Wade was overturned. Right, that was a huge milestone. However, they never had the authority to do it, so that entire case was null and void. Because when I read the Constitution, it says that we're securing these blessings to ourselves and our posterity. Right? That the laws of nature reveal that thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not murder. Right? So they never had the right to judge that matter one way or the other. It was already determined and laid down by law. The problem is the people allowed it to happen, and there wasn't enough of a fight to put back. Every one of those Supreme Court justices that went in that regard should have been voted out. And the problem is now that we have gone so far, and look, I'm saying this was put in place by design back in the 70s when they did that, right? That the people had to change, right? Because to first change public law, you must change public opinion. Remember, Lincoln said that little tyrant. But what they did was change the opinion of what the Supreme Court could and could not do. For 50 years, the people started to believe that the Supreme Court had the authority to make that ruling and that the states had to abide by it. Now, post that, it has been overturned, right? Praise God. That's no longer a case that you can hold up your little red flag card and say, see, the Supreme Court did this, so we have that choice. Yeah, baloney. But now it's being left to the states. Do the states have such authority to do that? No. But the people's opinion have changed, and this is one area that Trump has it wrong. When he says he's going to leave it to the states, there is no such thing. The federal government has the authority from the president's office to enforce the law. That is one of their duties. The legislature can call up the militia to enforce the law, right? During that time, now all of these states have propositions enshrined into their constitutions to say that you can murder the unborn. It's absolute insanity that the people's opinion have been changed to even think that was ever a thing. In Michigan, we had laws against abortion. Were they ever enforced in the state of Michigan? They were at one point, right? Till Roe versus Wade. Well, as soon as that was overturned, what happened in the state of Michigan, Donna? What did we get? I believe it was something called the reproductive freedom for, what was it? I don't even know.
I don't remember the name of it. It's just, all of those proposals that came in too, they were proposal 3. That was, none of those should have been voted on. There was something wrong with that too. I mean, the process isn't for them to even have that as a proposal. That should have gone through the legislature. Everything they've done has been absolutely out of process.
And that is because the people's opinion have changed on
right.
how it's supposed to work.
We don't have the right to vote that way according to the Constitution. They stepped outside of it. And I know, like with some of the investigation work that I've done, the executive branch has honestly just been making things up on the fly, and nobody is holding them in check. It's just like the Attorney General's office. This is about commerce. This is not on a personal level. It's the sheriffs that are supposed to be doing that. And they've got all the lines blurred on everything, so nobody knows what to do. And they state, plausible deniability when they get out of bounds. But if you really watch what they're doing, they're absolutely changing changing our perceptions. They're dumbing us down to what the process really should be. So we can't hold them accountable because we don't even know the difference. We don't even know the rails they're supposed to be on, but we're learning, you know?
Yeah. And that's the way all of us were, you know, from birth. You didn't understand the Constitution. That is something that we have to learn. We don't understand the laws. It's something that we have to learn. And unfortunately, the majority of us are learning a little bit later than we should, right? I thank God that I have the opportunity to homeschool my kids, because my kids, we just had that discussion last night. In fact, we were talking about the Constitution at the dinner table, right? And once again, I'm not bragging. I'm just making the point. This is how it's done. You have to get them started early because I can guarantee you, let me put this up. I can guarantee you I'm going to die. All right. They are left with whatever I leave them, and then whatever they want to do on their own. But if I don't leave them with the proper tools, they won't know how to do the proper work, right? That's a huge point in my house. And I make that point as much as I can to try to get them to understand that I am not here forever. Only God is here forever. So you have to be accountable to him for your actions, but I'm going to give you every tool I can that I can reasonably comprehend for you to be able to accomplish the things you have to do in life.
Amen.
Right? Because let me tell you this public indoctrination camp, we know it as public schools, the government will not teach you how to overthrow it. Right? So if you want to be able to be rational citizens, let's talk about that sometime, Karen. If you want to be able to be rational citizens within the United States, or rational citizens within your state properly determined, you have to be able to have the tools necessary to throw off tyrants. Right? And if you think that was just something that was done in 1776, you ought to go get a Geneva Bible from the 1600s and read through that, because the commentary in there, the majority of that describes how we are to be subject to the good and to throw off that which is evil, right? It's just oodles and oodles of commentary about throwing off tyrants there.
Well, and I think we need to continue on this because you know, with the resolutions that we've written through the Taxpayers Party, the Constitution Party, we are actually taking action. We're not doing things that just look like it's a popularity contest or and that sort of thing. But we have to be able to take action and move forward. And we're moving into that realm. Ralph, I wanted to bring this up. This is about Patricia Gardner, who was on the ballot yesterday. And the issues is that she's not following laws when changing custody, and she ran unopposed. And it's like, but she's on and she's got all kinds of problems. The Michigan Court of Appeals has actually said these words, that Patricia Gardner is not following the laws when changing custody. The judge is giving abusive parent custody and concealing the protective parent from the children. The children are committing suicide. Parents are saying that custody is being sold to the county of Kent, and many are aware, but no one is doing anything about it. Judge Gardner has her favorite attorneys, and she likes to partner with of high conflict custody cases. Appears one parent gets custody and the other parent is concealed for the children, and is also illegally taking children and placing them in foster care and adopting them out. Guys, this is one of the ways that they're doing this by kidnapping. It's a legal kidnapping and throwing them in HHS to be able to sell these kids for all sorts of bad things. This is literally what's happening in our country. And we need to find out who these people are that are breaking the law or who are destroying the family from within. When you see as many people as we saw in the judicial candidates running unopposed, I'm like, why? Why are they protecting their little brotherhood there, or sisterhood, or whatever you want to call it, their little racket in the judicial system, which is completely off the rails? We have got so much work to do. It's like, go ahead and celebrate President Trump. I'm a Trump supporter. I am excited about things to assert, but this is just a battle. And the war, we will lose the war if we all of a sudden go, yay, we did our thing, woo, and go home. Not happening. So here it is. Advocates exposing Patricia Gardner cannot get the justice. She is literally, and she was on the ballot right here. And there's all sorts of stuff out here. Here's the victims of there's even a blog, for gosh sakes, of victims of Judge Gardner blog. And this is what happens. This is literally what happens when we don't follow the law, and we are not being watchful, and we don't know what these people are doing. And we expect people with these voter guides, which every one of them is partisan. They're either doing the government as a vending machine to get more money or more favor or access, or they are oh, okay. See you, Ralph. Ralph's got to go. He's got some technique. Or they, or I don't know. I mean, this thing is still messed up. We don't go home. We don't go home. This is a lifelong pursuit for real patriots who will not back down and realize we're just at the beginning. So anyhow, 30 seconds, and please hold to that because Dave Gahary is backstage here, and I want to bring him on and give him time to talk. We're going to continue. BNN is going to continue bringing controversial topics forward, and I'm sorry, some people aren't going to have the stomach for it, because we need to get to the bottom of things. And expecting somebody to fix our problems is just going to hand us right back over to another person. Even if we win a battle, they're going to creep back in until we eradicate this evil from the land. It's not over yet. And I am poised for impact right now. Bill and then Karen, please, 30 seconds.
Yeah, when you talk about judges, one of the things that's often overlooked are those, right? And we just talked about the judicial system and how that's been corrupt and changed by the people's minds. But one of the things, especially in Kent County, an example of that was a judge by the name of Mark Trusock. I don't know if you remember him, Donna, but in 2020, they had a ruling that came out for the health department that Trusock gave a blanket warrant for everybody in the state of Michigan for the health, or at least in Kent County, I'm sorry, for the health department to come in and detain you for any health hazard necessary. You know that case was never overturned. That's the problem, is the people were not paying attention to the judges' seats either.
Well, and they're hiding stuff. They're hiding stuff. I mean, when you start signing things into being at 2 o'clock in the morning, which they know that a lot of them are doing in many cases, or signing the Patriot Act, treason, we've got a problem here. We do not have, this battle is not over. It's just beginning. We'll have to look into that, Bill. Maybe we do something through the Taxpayers Party, the Constitution Party, which is in fact the Constitution Party, which they won't let us change our names because they're still trying to obfuscate what is being done, because we can't have any competition between the other parties. Karen, 30 seconds.
I would like to also celebrate a couple of things that I noticed last night, this morning. In my local precinct, my township has, according to 2020 census, about 3,100 people. So let's say it's probably more than that. 3,000 people. 1,000 people voted for in the presidential election. 75% of those voted for Trump. The people are participating more than I think they've probably ever done before. That is to be celebrated. And number two, I saw a post by about a J6 defendant celebrating in faith and praising God because they expect that when Trump gets into office, they will be pardoned on day one. And that should be celebrated. If nothing else, they have something to hope for the next few months that'll help get them through, besides their increased faith in God.
That's fantastic. And that is something to be, that hope is something to definitely celebrate, and very excited about that. But realize these people are not going to go away. And between now and when he gets in office, on Inauguration Day, be poised for impact, because they're not just going to lay down and say, yeah, okay, he won. We know the participation was there. We know it. And I'm going to keep going back to this. Let's prove it. because by the process of proving that he got in, that he won. I believe he won, even though there was cheating. I believe he won. We go in there and we prove it because we got nothing to hide, right? We change everything. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and thank you guys for being on here today, and I'll be back in about 30 seconds with Dave Gahary. Thanks for being on today, guys.
Take care.
Be right back. Good morning and welcome to the second hour of Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it is the 6th of November, 2024, and welcome to our show. On the last segment, I want to make a real quick comment. Lev says, I was watching the results come in on an independent newsman's page. Michigan stopped counting around 11:30 p.m. and then restarted about 10 minutes later, as well as Detroit had white vans and cars show up with ballots again around 3 a.m. So with that said, guys, we still have some work to do. And guess what? True patriots are not going to be falling away from this. Our next hour, I have Dave Gahary on, who is a principal officer for Wrongs Without Remedies, which publishes Moon Rock books. And they are currently have, I think, 12 books, and they're provocative titles. And you guys know I love things that are make us think, right? And to listen to what people have to say that make us think, but not that challenge the normal narrative. So I want to welcome Dave on. Welcome, Dave. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing, Donna?
I'm wonderful, and I know you're friends with my buddy Casey Whalen, and I absolutely love Casey.
I do too.
And I thank you for coming on today. I'm very much looking forward to what you have to say, because looks like we could go in a million different directions.
Probably could. What you need to start somewhere, pick a direction.
No, I'm going to let you do that, because I you know what, I never talk to any of my guests before we get online, other than just, if it's a regular
All right. Well, then I'll ask you a question.
All right, go ahead. I'm going to fail your test, okay? But I will do my best.
No, you're not. Why did you have me on today?
Because I want to hear what you have to say. And I like to talk to a variety of people. Casey brought it up and said that you write books on history and you challenge the narrative, which I like. I never bought 9/11 is what we were being sold at from the beginning to. In fact, I've got an architect on tomorrow that we're going to be looking at some of the things that I believe need to be challenged in 9/11, because I do believe that this was brought down from the inside of our government, not the outside, and or with help from the outside. And so I think that listening to people that challenge the narrative is the smartest thing we can do. We've got to start thinking about things that are being spoon-fed to us and go, I wonder what really went on there. Well, let's start talking, because fake news is manipulating everything. There's so much propaganda out there. Not that I believe in wholesale what people say, but I think it's important, and it's the starting point in doing our own research, in asking questions and tackling the hard, looking at things from a differing perspective to get to the truth. How's that?
Yeah, that's vital. And of course, we're fortunate enough to have the protection of Amendment 1 to do that. And there are people and entities within this country and without who want to take that away from us. And it's incumbent on us to make sure that we never let that happen. And
I also like to go after, the protected classes of citizens needs to go away, because that's how they've divided us. And the way they've divided us is to say, look here, not over here, where they're really getting you, right? So the narrative is deceptive, and it totally has to be challenged.
Yeah, absolutely.
How's that for an answer?
That's good. You didn't fail.
Good. Not yet.
No, you're not going to fail. So yeah, and I listened a little bit to the show before I came on, and there was a fellow, I believe, William Mohr.
Bill, yeah.
Yeah. Very good. I agree with what I heard, what he said. It's very important that we try to find the truth, and we pass the truth on to the important people in our lives. Now, you and I, we are talking to hopefully a lot of people about these topics that we consider to be important. Of course, the issue is, I think the main issue is that people like us are in the stark minority, because let's just say, and I have no reason or I have no evidence to back up this number, but let's just say 99.999% of Americans do not want to go to the areas that we want to go to.
Mm.
So the way I explain it is that, let's say you are outside and you're doing a little yard work and you see your neighbor, and of course, always what happens is that the phone rings when I'm doing shows, but I have it on silent. You won't hear it, but I see it flashing, so I'm going to ignore that. And you see your neighbor, and let's say your neighbor's name is Joe, right? And, my neighbor. And I go out there, and I'm doing a little yard work, and, hey, Joe, hey, Dave, how you doing? Great. What's going on? No, not much. I've been on the internet researching some stuff. Yeah, me too. Yeah, and what'd you find, Dave? I said, well, I just don't know. I just don't know if I believe that the United States went to the moon. And Joe might have a reaction like, what? Of course we went to the moon, Dave. You saw it on TV, didn't you? And I'll say, yeah, but I just don't, I don't believe it. There are too many things that, point to believing otherwise. And, you might shoot the breeze a little bit more with Joe and, all right, keep researching. All right, see you later. The next week you see Joe. You're doing the yard work. And, Dave, you've been going on that internet researching? I have, Joe. Yeah, all right, what'd you find out now? Well, I did some research on this, and, I just don't know if I believe that 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust. Now, remember Joe's reaction with the moon. Joe's reaction now is quite different. Joe recoils in horror. What are you talking about, Dave? Of course they did. You saw the pictures. They starved them. They bulldozed them. How could you even say that? That's horrible. Now, Joe turns around with his rake. He doesn't even say goodbye. And that is the power of what you were talking about earlier, the media.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The Jews media, not the news media. The Jews media, because it's controlled by Jews, spoon-fed this stuff into Joe's cranium. Joe knows nothing about the Holocaust. Joe knows what he was told. Joe has not researched it. Joe will not research it. When his neighbor just makes an innocuous statement that I'm not sure, that's enough to get Joe enraged because of the way he's been programmed. So this is what we're dealing with. And when you talk about wanting to entertain other ways of looking at things, other ways of analyzing things, you have to get beyond the programming. And many times it's not possible. So for myself, I've adopted a position of I will not talk to Joe. I don't have a neighbor Joe, but let's just say I will not talk to my neighbors about this stuff because the programming is so heavy and so successful that if I do, without giving them the material to learn it and giving them the time to learn it, then if I do breach this topic with Joe, Joe will be uncomfortable. I will be uncomfortable. I won't be able to see Joe the way that I saw him before, even though it was just on the surface, which was fine. It wasn't a deep relationship, but that's ruined. Joe looks at me now that I'm some sort of a mental case, that I'm thinking the Holocaust didn't happen. How dare I think the Holocaust didn't happen? Because he knows for sure it happened because they told him it happened. Mm-hmm. And if I know anything, Joe might say, yeah, well, if you know so much, why aren't you on TV? And then I'd have to explain to Joe, well, they don't want somebody like me on TV.
I got to tell you, you're going to be really amused by this, okay? Because we don't know each other. This is the first time we've talked. Yes. We had no seconds before we got on here at all. So this is like sitting down with a new friend that we don't know each other. But I have the distinction of being kicked off of 2 political parties in one election cycle as I ran for governor of the state of Michigan. I sued in the court system here. I sued in Supreme Court that the Board of Elections lost 10,000 of my ballots because we can't have Brandenburg on because Brandenburg is going to speak the truth. And there were so many people that attacked me, and I mean, it was brutal. A person who really wasn't probably of my makeup would have really had a problem psychologically with this. For me, I was like, oh, badge of honor, got attacked again. Great. You guys just keep coming at me because you know what? It means that I am, in fact, over the target. And there was the Republicans were absolutely brutal once I got, and they were the ones that removed me from the ballot. No apologies, no nothing, right? So I went to the Constitution Party. Somebody committed a 14-year felony to keep me off that party, which is still hanging out there. And that if I decide to go forward with it, and I'm definitely going forward in one manner or another. But the point being is that because people have aligned themselves in identity politics with these groups, they can't see the truth because, and this goes back, in my opinion, to a lack of faith in God Almighty, because they're trying to get control of an out of control world. So they're trying to control it. If you have faith in God, you can ride out any storm, no matter what comes your way, and goes, God's in control. We're just gonna go forward on this, and God's in control, and it's gonna be fine. Perfect example of this. 9/11 comes around. You and I are going to be talking the same language here. And what happens? They've got 2 passports. The ridiculousness, the absurdity of this defies explanation. And the whole country buys this wholesale. They find 2 passports from people that they know are terrorists because they've been told that these are terrorists in a city that has been turned, that all of the evidence has basically been turned to powder, and somehow magically in a city full of paper and debris within 2 hours, they found the passports of 2 Arab terrorists that they can absolutely tack this to. And now we've got the answer. It was the terrorist that came from the Middle East. And now we've got another group of people to hate. We've got a boogeyman to hate. And this continues on and on and on and on. I went to Dearborn this past week, and met with Arabs for Trump. They were some of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. I didn't have anybody that was, shouting Ali Akbar and ready to slice my throat.
Thank goodness.
I mean, it is so ridiculous. The division that has been going on for so long. And we gotta realize that there's not one of us that hasn't been subject to this, and just sit back. And as my grandpa used to say, well, this is new information, and give it time to settle.
Well, that's the issue. The issue is you've got some of the genes of your grandpa.
I had a lot of their genes, my grandpa and my dad.
There you go. And that's a good thing, because your grandpa, he was open to this information that would make others recoil. The problem is that what you brought up about the passport just happening to be like right on a pile of rubble, or Building 7 having 2 office fires and collapsing on the same day into its own footprint. After Larry Silverstein, the guy who took over the lease of the Port Authority in New York and New Jersey a month and a half before 9/11, admitted on the documentary America Rebuilds by PBS that there was so much loss of life, we just had to pull it. We decided to pull it down. Even though that's there, Americans don't get it. And this is the issue that we're dealing with. So it's not like we should look at, and this is a big issue and this is what William was saying, and he's right. A lot of us arrive at the conclusions that we have arrived at far too late. I know I have. I should have recognized that the media was the big issue here. The programming was the big issue. I should have realized that 99.999% of Americans know absolutely nothing. But I didn't. I do now. So my approach is different. I know that I can't talk to Joe anymore. I know that I don't want to talk to any Joe anymore, and I don't. So I do not talk to people, except people in our family, like us.
See, I talk to everybody.
Well, no. I mean, look, you're not going to talk to Joe because Joe is going to get off the show. He's going to leave. You talk to people who can hear your message. They're not offended by it. And they want to do something positive for the world. And that's what differentiates us from the bad guys and from what you could call the sleeping masses or the sleepwalkers or the goyim, or whatever you want to call them. The ones who are not engaged, who don't question Building 7, who don't question the passport, who don't question anything. They're just happy to be living. And this is the issue. So you are specializing in what you're specializing in. I'm specializing in what I'm specializing in. And we both want the same thing. We both want the truth. That's it.
And you know what? And I love talking to people who are a bit inflammatory to the accepted narrative. And I typically don't correct people. So a lot of people will say, well, why didn't you correct that person? I'm like, just wait. You know, you give enough people, you give somebody enough rope, they're going to hang themselves if they're in the wrong. And yes. If we're open to what they have to say, though we may not agree with it, sometimes we can come to an agreement or go, oh my gosh, we were both misled. And then you end up having a unifying thing based around the truth, not around the castles in our mind that we've built up to protect things. And the victors write the history books. And so what we've learned and what we know needs to be questioned, because, you know, it's like the global power structure that we have has nothing to do with the people. I have no issues with the Chinese people. I have no issues with the Jewish people, with the Latino people, with the African people, with the Indian people, with the Arab population. Every single one of us has been victimized by these global psychopaths that use our good hearts to divide us and to create boogeymen and such. Has nothing to do with the people. It is them, and they wage war on us.
That's where a lot of folks would take a look at, for example, making that statement. You have nothing. This isn't against the people, right? Overall, people around the world are good. I found.
I think we're all the same. I mean, it's the wackadoodles that get in office that are in there for power and such, right?
But the issue here is that what has really woke up a lot of folks. Well, if we look at, you know, the modern era, right? You've had the Kennedy assassination, which really woke up a lot of folks. I was 3 when it happened, so I don't remember it. There are folks I talked to, and last night I had a guy on who remembered exactly where he was in school when it happened, and he was 11, so he was in 6th grade, and he remembered exactly what happened. You know, the teachers told him the president was shot. They didn't know that he was dead at the time, and he told me his reactions. But the Kennedy assassination woke up a lot of folks, and they're still alive today, and they're still fighting. 9/11 woke up a lot of folks. I've interviewed those folks who have been woken up by 9/11. They've gone in a certain direction. When they study 9/11, they understood that, and even JFK, when they study those two things, they understood that the hand of Israel and Jews was in both of those operations. As a matter of fact, there are books written about the fact that Jews in Israel did 9/11 or did the Kennedy assassination. So one would have to read those books first to come to their own conclusions. And I have my own conclusions. After 9/11, what was the next big thing that woke up a whole ton of people? It was COVID. A lot of people woke up from COVID. They saw how it was handled in lockstep and how these things were these experimental therapies were forced on folks, and how now we see a bunch of people dying. I know I have a nephew who's in the military, young guy, always healthy. He was forced to take it. He got a blood clot in his leg. It's because of this thing, obviously, this unapproved therapy, experimental therapy. What was the next thing that woke up a lot of people? And I'm painting with a broad brush here.
You go ahead. That's great.
That was October 7. How could it be that an occupation country who's illegally occupying that land, which has been declared by the law that they are, how could it be that terrorists, supposedly, I guess, parachuted in without them knowing about it? They've got a wall. They've got all the technology. They get billions, maybe trillions from this once great nation. How could it be that they didn't know about it? And how could it be that now there have been 40, 50, 60, who knows how many thousands of innocent civilians holocausted by this country, Israel? And how could it be that almost 90% of that country feels that the response to the so-called terrorists was not enough How could it be that a people wants to kill, bomb, blow up women, children, men, boys, girls, the elderly, indiscriminately? Polls have been taken that they approve of it. So when someone says all people are the same, this person, people from Brazil, people from Russia, Jews, Christians, Muslims, there's a large segment of the truth movement that would not agree with that. There's a large segment of the truth movement that say, no, Jews are not like us. If they were, then 90% of them wouldn't be voting for more massacres, more slaughter. So I would say to anyone who thinks that they are, that you tell me how it is that a people, in this case Jews, would vote for more wanton slaughter. And I would tell that person that they need to study this topic a lot more.
Let me ask you a question. In a base level, though, I mean, I believe the governments are absolutely corrupt. And you look at how society is, and look at what happened in the United States and some of the other countries. It's arguable. It's an arguable point that we have actually voted for the same people in the United States that are part of this global power structure. Now, that doesn't mean, I mean, we have voted, our nation basically voted Biden in, who started more wars. I mean, they cheated. I'm going to give you that. But the point being is that I don't think this is clear cut. This is my opinion, is what we want to make it and say these type of people are bad or these type of people are bad. I think that there's so much brainwashing that's gone on, that we have good people that have become captured assets in every single country, no matter what it is, and they think they're doing the right thing because the boogeyman has been sold to them by these corrupt government entities. I think that they're so angry because when you're in trauma and you've seen your family, you've seen, like kids that come out of schools and they shoot them in the neck to disable them. And I mean, I know this stuff happens in the Middle East in order to disable these kids and leave it with their families. And that was an alleged account by the Israeli army shooting Palestinian kids as they come out of the schools to disable them and not necessarily kill them, but to disable them and disable their whole families and such. There have been horrific crimes going on both sides, where it doesn't matter what it is. But when you see that kind of trauma, human response is to jump onto the team that you perceive is at fault, or to jump on against them and to jump on the team that you see that pain coming from. Now, does that mean that those people are evil? I don't believe they are. I believe a lot of them are really misdirected, and that was an intentional, absolutely an intentional asset capture by these large governmental entities. We have it in the United States right now. Look at the people going through our indoctrination camps in the universities. We've got young people. Are they bad? Do we say, you've murdered how many babies and you're fighting for Planned Parenthood? Are they inertly evil? I don't have the answer for that.
Right. But
it's the governments.
Well, this is the issue here.
Okay.
When you go into this direction, and by the way, I had a really close friend who was in the 9/11 Truth Movement by the name of Victor Thorne, who is no longer with us. He was quite prolific. He wrote many books. And when he started to dig deeper into 9/11, he found out that there were Jewish and Israeli fingerprints all over it. As soon as he started to expose that, he wasn't in the 9/11 Truth Movement anymore. They threw him out. So what we
Both
see
sides are controlled. I'm going to tell you that right now is that
well, we're not controlled, right? You and
we're
I are
not.
not
Well,
right.
I'm not. I'm
so
too
our
ornery to be
right.
controlled,
I'm
but-
not controlled. Our side isn't controlled. But if I told you that it's raining right now, would you believe me? It is. It hasn't rained here in like 3 months, so that's a good thing. If I told you that 100 years ago in Germany, what is happening here in the United States with all this transgender nonsense and all the other garbage that is coming out of, as you mentioned, the universities, academia. If I told you that happened in Germany 100 years ago, would you believe me?
Actually, I would give you quite a bit of credibility on that one, because I think that that's something that we need to challenge.
Well, no. Well, I'm going to tell you that that's where all this stuff started, in Weimar, Germany, after World War I.
I would say that there's a lot of credibility to that statement.
And the same people who did that 100 years ago, the same Jews who did that, the same Frankfurt School who did that, are doing it here now.
I would agree with that.
So if you look at the money behind the movements, you'll find, and that's why I was saying what I was saying earlier, that's why you need to read about this stuff, and you'll find that no matter what, it's the same Jews. It's not the same people, but it's the same tribe. It's the same way of thinking. It's the same people who think that abortion is a Jewish sacrament. That's why Jews are behind abortion rights. That's why Jews are behind gun control. That's why Jews are behind transgender. That's why Jews are behind challenging the traditional order of a country like the United States. Jews were so prominent in the opposition to the Vietnam War that there was even a button made that said, you don't have to be Jewish to be against the Vietnam War. Jews are behind the civil rights movement. Jews created the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, not blacks. Jews created it and led it. Jews fund both political parties in the United States. That's why the governor of the state I'm in, Florida, he signed 2 anti-free speech laws, anti-free speech against Floridians, such as myself. He signed 2 anti-free speech laws in 2019 and 2023 in Jerusalem. Why would the governor of Florida sign 2 anti-free speech laws which take away my speech? Why would he do that in Jerusalem? Well, I know why. You might not know why. Your listeners might not know why. Your listeners might not know that 43% of U.S. billionaires are Jews. Your listeners might not know that Jews and Jewish groups are the primary funders of political campaigns. Your listeners might not know that a big Hollywood Jew created Ronald Reagan. And there's all the evidence to back it up.
Who is that?
Lou Wasserman of MCA. There's a great book. Title is The Last Mogul, M-O-G-U-L. The Last Mogul. It's a thick book. I think it's probably like 600-700 pages. Terrific. In that book, it details, how that happened. And it's not a book that was written to say, look, Jews create politicians and control them. You can read a variety of books that can lead you to that conclusion. And of course, it's true. Reagan was an actor, and Jews still do that to this day. Reagan was an actor. This particular Jew and the Jews around him who controlled, and still control, Hollywood and the media, thought that this would be a good candidate to push forward their agenda. That's why people do it. They don't do it for any other reason. And they've got the money. So if we agree that money controls elections, not conclusively, but obviously it helps, and we know who has the money, and we can track who's putting the money forward for politicians, then we can see why DeSantis would go to Jerusalem to take away my free speech rights. Because the road to the U.S. presidency goes through Tel Aviv. And that is not even enough to wake up your average American. Because they won't even get it. They want to think about other things. They want to think about the piercing or the tattoo they're going to get, or the new iPhone, or who's going to win that ball game. Or I got to go pick up a 12-pack for the weekend and a pack of butts. But they will not even care that the road to the United States presidency goes through Tel Aviv. And they won't even notice that the United States has been handing over these high-tech weapons to this occupation country in the Middle East to continue to blow up civilians. Without a whimper. Here it is. They won't notice that a congressional representative from Kentucky, Thomas Massey, admitted that every congressperson has an AIPAC guy minding his office or her office, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. Everyone. He doesn't. My Congressman Matt Gaetz doesn't take PAC money, so that's good. But that's only 2 out of 435, or at least the ones on the Republican side of the aisle that Massey is familiar with. So, who controls our country? Is it some sort of global elite? Let's say it is. But what percentage of that global elite just happen to be Jews? Is it a coincidence? C-O-H-E-N-cidence? Is it something that we really shouldn't pay attention to? Is it something that maybe it'll go away if we don't talk about it or look at it? Or is that the issue? Are those the bad guys? And it's incumbent on all of us to find out why DeSantis went to Israel to take away the free speech of Floridians. It's my premise that this country and other white Western countries around the world have been captured by Jewish and Israeli interests. They did 9/11, without a doubt. They might have done Kennedy. But the good news is, the bad news is this camera's moving. The good news is their grip is loosening. People are waking up. The mainstream media is almost gone. It's in self-destruct mode. The regime media, mainstream media, corporate media, whatever you want to call it, Jews media, CNN, stuff like that, it's gone. What you're doing is the media. What I'm doing is the media. What Joe Rogan is doing is the media. What Tucker Carlson is doing is the media. All the alternative sites out there that are attempting to get to the bottom of things are the media. The folks who pay attention to this stuff will not watch. Who watch, honestly? Unless you're in an airport or a hotel, are you going to watch CNN? Probably not.
Clinton News Network. No.
Yeah, right. Or Communist News Network.
Communist News Network.
So there's my rant. How about it?
Yeah. Well, and I think that we need to listen to each other, whether we agree or not, to get to the truth on this. And I still stick with the point that this is a global net crime syndicate, and there are people
I agree with you.
that there are people that I'm not going to say that's the Jews, because in my opinion, there are people. When you look at Kissinger was the one that set up the CCP in China. You have people that are at the top that are willing to kill their own people.
And Kissinger was a Jew, right?
She was, right.
Yeah.
But I mean, the point being is that there are people at the top in every community who are playing ball with these people. And it doesn't matter who it doesn't matter who they are. I mean, you could say that he was a Jewish origin, but he was also American. And you see all the dual citizenship. That needs to end. This stuff needs to end. Either
it's not going to end.
Well, it is. I believe it is.
But the problem is that if you don't, not you, but if someone doesn't understand who's doing it and why they're doing it, then they can't possibly believe that they could tackle the issue.
Well, and I think though too, I mean, when you look at like the Orsini family or the Pallavicini family and that sort of thing, what I see this as, and I might, I'm willing to be educated. I am not going to be the one that's going to say this, but I think that there are so many power structures, and it is a global crime syndicate that's running the whole thing. I believe that there are different cells to every organism. It runs like an organism. And they're all playing ball together, like Maduro down there in Venezuela. You've got different people in different areas that are playing ball with this organization. But just to be clear, I have no issues with the Jewish people as people. I have no issues with the American people that are perhaps a problem. I have no issues with the Chinese people. I think that I just want to make sure that we are very clear and tactical about our words. I have a gal that comes on here who is Jewish, and she has laid out the Franklin School and all of these power brokers across the world very clearly.
The Frankfurt School or Franklin?
I think it's the Frankfurt School from
Frankfurt,
Germany.
yes,
yeah,
Frankfurt.
The Frankfurt School as a person, but she's Jewish, and I don't want to injure anyone.
Oh, you wouldn't. This doesn't have to do with her. She's not in power, right?
So right.
She's not trying to hurt us, right?
She's made a clear differentiation, which is really helpful in targeting who these people are and not making a broad stroke. She's like, you're talking Israelis, you're talking Israel, you're not talking the people. And I think that was, she said, the Jewish people are separate from the Israeli people. And I really like the way she put it. I've actually seen some Jews that have sat there that they have said, we are Jews and we need to renounce Israel as a country and as a power. And they're like, we should not be here and claiming the land. So to make a differentiation,
there are a few of them, yes,
and not injure someone, but open the door to people who actually want what the rest of us want, which is peace and such. So I'm very careful on that. It's just like the Chinese people. I would not condemn all of the Chinese people, nor the Jewish people.
Nobody's saying all of them.
Right.
But as I mentioned earlier, if you're looking at a poll of Jews in Israel who believe that they should bomb more civilians, kill more civilians, then there are folks who go, there's something not right here. There's something not right here. How could it be that they are fine with what's happening? So if 40 or 50,000 civilians here were blown up by the U.S. government, do you think that would be allowed? It would continue to be allowed? Do you think that Americans would go, yeah, it's okay? I don't. How could it be that 90% of Israeli Jews think it's okay? So if we just look at that one fact, that one statistic, that in and of itself should be like a huge red flag. And you should ask your friend if she knows about that. And if she does know about that, what does she think about that?
Yeah, she speaks out on this stuff. And she said too, though, she said, remember, she said the Jewish, I mean, when you look at the United States, how long did it take the United States to wake up to what was going on in Ukraine? And
it hasn't woken up yet.
Well, there's a lot of us that have started to wake up on this and call complete BS on the boogeyman that they're trying to set up for us. But there's a lot of people in the United States that could be accused of the genocide that's happened in all over the world. I just don't think a lot of people really are educated and know.
They're not.
And so I don't want to have everybody stop the conversation. If we can say, look, your own country is killing its own people. Our country, the people in this country have been killing our own people for decades. The people within the Jewish, the Israeli state have killed their own people. I think that the October 7 was the Israeli government killing its own people.
Some people think that, yeah.
I do. I think
that it was a false flag, right?
I believe so.
Right. So these topics need further research.
Agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
And we have to be, and that's how you started off the conversation. These topics need to be fully discussed. We cannot cringe. We cannot recoil because of the programming that we've all been subjected to, that we've been given through that Jewish prism of the media and Hollywood.
Yeah.
That the Jews even admit that, yes, Jews control Hollywood, and I'm glad we do. Many Jews have said that. But to get past that point of worrying about, well, I can't really say this, but yeah, you can say anything you want. You're an American. We can all say whatever we want. And guess what? Too bad if somebody doesn't like it. Because that's what Amendment 1 is for. It's not there to protect good speech, friendly speech. It's there to protect speech that's going to make you cringe. And if you're not cringing every day, then what are you doing?
Good discussions to have for sure, because it does challenge it. And I think that we should be challenging everything that we think. Right. I really do, and it may take a while, but like I've said, walk around the building and listen to what people say. And that's on both sides. I'm not giving the Israeli government a pass or the dual citizens that are in power, because there's so many of them.
Or the 90% who think that there should be more slaughter in Gaza, right? You're not giving them a pass either.
I had somebody ask me that at a meeting this weekend. It was really interesting. She was from Lebanon. She was Lebanese. And she said, well, what side of the argument are you on in regards to Gaza and Israel? And I'm like, well, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not on either side of that argument, and I'll tell you why. The reason why I won't take sides on that is because, A, I'm not there. I'm not part of the dynamic to see what's really able to be have a judgment made on. And so I don't feel qualified. I said, but I will tell you that I am against all forms of murdering people for political reasons. And we need to clearly call out those people that are doing it, because they're victimizing their own people. It's not just a broad blanket of saying all Americans are bad, kill Americans whenever you go to another country, because that's what's been happening. There are countries across the globe that hate us, absolutely hate us. The programming is so incredible. There's a lot of people that absolutely love us that haven't bought the program.
And then you got to ask, why do they hate the Americans?
Yeah, why do they hate us? What's the programming there? There's so much programming going on that I think we have to be very, very careful about. Personally, I believe that we need to be careful, because I don't want to become a captured asset of the other side either. and you know, which wants to divide us as a people, as human beings. You know, there are people who are Jewish who are just wonderful, wonderful people. There are people who are Palestinians who are wonderful people. The governments that are controlling this and keeping these fake wars going.
Right, right. We're not talking about the people.
Right. We're talking about
right. But that poll indicated something that should be studied.
I agree with that. I absolutely, yeah. And my Jewish friend who came on here too said what people don't understand is that 90% of the population of Israel, this came from somebody who's Jewish, who is admittedly Jewish, okay? That she said 90% of the people in Israel are atheists. They are not religious Jews who follow the Torah, who follow this. We're talking about people. It's like, I really think that the Talmud should be seriously looked at, because it promotes pedophilia and says it's okay. And so, I mean, when you look at the Talmudic Jews and the ones who absolutely can justify by this godforsaken book that's basically Babylonian, that needs to be looked at. We're looking at this for the truth, not for what people, and we have to be very careful as we're looking at what's being said, to go to the source documents, and be very clear on our condemnation of what we're talking about, because the brokers, the money brokers, and who's pulling the levers of the cash system. I mean, all you got to look at is like the Rothschilds and that sort of thing. And they're where did they come from? They didn't come from where anybody thinks they came from. They went through Britain, commandeered what was going on there for the money system. And where did the Balfour Declaration come from? Came from through Britain. So there's a lot of questions to be asked. And I think if we do it in a way that helps people understand that we aren't just out here broad brush, you know, hitting all of these, but tactically looking at the systems that were rigged.
Well, you got to read. People have to read.
Right.
And that's what we do. We're publishers. So we have 4 imprints, publishing imprints.
Yeah.
One is moneytreepublishing.com.
Yeah, I've got it right here.
Yes, and one is Moonrock Books Publishing. Well, you can go to the imprints tab right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you'll see those are the other 3 imprints.
Oh, that's
so we've
cool.
got an imprint that talks about the USS Liberty. We've got an imprint. If you go back to Money Tree, you'll see.
I want to talk about that one, because
sure.
I honestly want to know what's going on. And I think a lot of us need to know or are interested in what's really going on out there, because I know that I am not buying pretty much anything that's been said across the board. I mean, we are going to have to ask some very tough questions. The male-female fight that's going on, that was absolutely engineered, and they went after the psychological profile of women who are very easily, or who can be very easily emotionally manipulated to go against our own men. And I'm gonna tell you that I am a staunch defender of men. In Henry Ford, he was a big problem. I mean, I get this, and I understand where you're going from this. I really do. But it's not just one area. It's an organism of evil. And I'm like, bring on the toxic masculinity and go take care of things.
Well, there's a reason. There's a reason why Tel Aviv is the homosexual capital of the world. Did you know that?
I'm listening to you talk, because it's like there's a lot of things that I have heard, but I listen to every different.
Right. So there's a reason why, like your friend said, maybe 90% of Israelis are atheist. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why Jews are predominantly behind gun control in the United States. There's a reason why Jews are in the vanguard and predominantly behind transgenderism. getting the pornography in our children's books. There's a reason for that. And it's called the noticing. And once you study this enough and you begin to notice...
What is that? I've never heard what is the noticing.
What that is that people are starting to notice that behind all of these individual elements that are destructive to this country, there's a Jew or a Jewish group. So it's incumbent, again, on you and everyone else to find out why I'm saying this. Am I crazy? Am I just a raging anti-Semite? Do I hate Jews? Or is this something that makes sense? Is this something that can be backed up by facts? And it can. So behind every door, behind the homosexual door, the civil rights door, the transgender door, removing God from the public square door, removing the ability to say prayer in school door, behind the gun control door, behind all that fun stuff that has destroyed this country, there's a Jew. Not your friend, not your average Jew, but there's clearly a Jew and a Jewish group who are doing this. There's Jewish NGOs pushing all this stuff. There are Jews, they even admitted it. You could just look at the headlines in the newspapers. There were a handful of Jews who pushed for war after 9/11. PNAC, it doesn't exist anymore, but they were Jewish neocons. All one need do is open up their eyes and look for the Jews and then go, am I crazy? Am I seeing all these Jews? It can't be right. But it is right. So yes, it's not people. We're not talking about your average man on the street, although 90% of those men on the street said they want more bloodshed. They want more babies blown to bits. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the people in power. And if Jews are 1% to 2% of the global population, holy mackerel. You got a whole hell of a lot of them in positions of power and doing really bad things. Like Madeleine Albright, when asked on the mainstream media, 500,000 Iraqi children have been murdered. Do you think it was worth it? And Madeleine Albright, that's not her real name.
What's her real name?
She's a Czech Jew. I forget. It's some Czech name. She said, yes, I think it was worth it to murder 500,000 Iraqi children. How many children, how many innocent people does Kissinger have? Not anymore. Thankfully, he's gone. The blood on his hands. So when we study this stuff, when we see how many innocent white Russians, the Jewish Bolsheviks murdered, when we see what happened to Germany after World War I and World War II, when we see how Germany's been demonized to this day, do you think it's the Eskimos who are doing it? Or the Brazilians? Or the Argentinians? Or the Cubans? Do you think it's the Polish? The British? How about the Finnish? The Canadians? The Australians? The Chinese? Who's doing it? Who controls the media? Who is doing it? Who is setting the pace? Who is setting the narrative? Who is telling us who we should hate and who we should love? It's the Jews, stupid. Not you. Just like it's the economy, stupid. Ta-da!
And that's your thing. So
that's my thing.
That's your thing.
Because that's the forbidden thing. That's where we're not allowed to go. And that's where we need to go. And that's what they know.
they know how. Oh, you're fun. I got to tell you that. And it's like I like talking about all different subjects that challenge, no matter what it is. But I kind of like to go to one step further. It's good or it's evil, and that's what it is. And it comes in lots and lots of labels. And so I think that that's something that seems to be in a way, though there is problems in every sector on our globe. I look at the evil that they commit, and you can see the power structures. You can see the different things going on, and got to tell you, I'm a person who likes to defend everybody just at my core and give them a chance on an individual basis rather than grouping people in a group. Okay. However, with that said, there definitely are patterns that we have to look at, and there are organizations that we also need to go after. And when you look at, say, like the drugs coming into this country and how that started, our own government was paying that. Where did that come from? Where did those directions come from? We need to look at that. When you look at what happened down in Mexico with the president down there, that should be a little bit eye-opening to everyone, and we should look into that because of who was placed as president in a predominantly Catholic nation. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, right?
She seems to be doing some good things, though.
We don't, well, yeah, and that's the point, is that we just don't know. But I like to give people chances on their individual merit.
Of course.
And
it's all about learning. It's all about reading.
Let's
read. Let's read some stuff.
Yeah.
Let's go to Money Tree Publishing.
Let's look at your books, and let's throw some other things out that have actually backed with some fact that would lead you to this perspective, because I think that could probably be helpful. Henry Kissinger, I got to tell you, I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we've got the DeVos influence up here, which they're globalists. They're all over the place. And they put up the Ford Museum. When I go into the Ford Museum is absolutely a Kissinger museum. It's not a Ford museum. And I know people who grew up with Ford and said he was a really good guy when he was younger, but remembers when he turned and what happened. When I go into that museum, he is absolutely pissed in every single picture that's there, because he's almost like a beaten dog. Like, he's just furious with what's happening. And it's in that museum that Kissinger is calling the shots. Look at the visuals there. It's always calling the shots on everything.
Yep.
I don't even believe the people who say that they're in control for Israel are actually, I don't believe that they're actually Jewish. And I think that there needs to be another name for this group of people, because it is, when I look at the structure, I don't just see one group. I see many people who have fallen victim to this globalist evil. And I mean, it's evil. The whole thing is evil. And they've got their tentacles in every single organization and so when we limit the scope of that under one ethnicity, though there's you could sit there and say all Italians are bad because of the mafia and such.
Well, the mafia wasn't controlled by the Italians. It was controlled by the Jews. That's another big misconception that folks have. It was the Jewish mob that was controlling the Italian mob. But again, it's not looking at the little person. It's making sure that we pay attention to these topics that are verboten.
I would agree with that.
We can't shy away from them.
I would have to confront them. That's what we need to do, is we need to confront all topics.
Yes. And if this topic is as important as I am acting as it is, then it might make sense to look into it for you and your listeners or viewers, that it might be something that, look, if I'm wrong, God, that would be great. Right? If I'm wrong, if somebody could show me that I'm wrong, that would be great. It's just like the USS Liberty. I know more about the Liberty than probably anybody in the world.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Well, let's just say this.
Okay.
Right? I wish that there was somebody else, because I would talk to them. I would know it. Okay? So I'm coming out with a revision to the book I wrote on the Liberty next year. And in there will be all the information that I have and all the facts that I have and all the interviews that I've done. And so folks can read it and come to their own conclusion. But I think the main part of the Liberty is people want to know why, right? So the Liberty guys, people associated with the Liberty, people who were not associated with the Liberty, their question is why? Why did they do it? And the answer might not be there right now. So that information might not be available. But the fact is that they did it and how they did it and how they covered it up and how they continue to cover it up.
Tell us some of what you know on that so people become familiar with the subject. I know a little bit about it.
Well, why don't we, if you'd like, we could devote another show to it and we can talk nothing about nothing except the Liberty, nothing else. I did an X space that I was invited in a couple of months ago, and I really don't I don't really pay attention to I call it anti-social media. But somebody was asking me questions about the Liberty because they regularly come to me as a source, as I do go to other people for other topics. And I was giving him the answers, and he said, I'm in this space. Why don't you, I didn't even know what it was. So he said, why don't you come in? 6 hours later, it was over. And I talked for almost that whole time, fielded questions. So there's a lot to know about the Liberty, and there's a lot that I know. I would not torture you with 6 hours of minutia about it. But if
I listen to it because I'm one of these super nerds that I like to listen to facts. I really do like to hear what people say, and I want to know every single thing.
Well, ask me one question about the Liberty now, and then we'll do another show if you like.
I'm just going to let you come out with some fact that will blow. Tell us one fact that will blow everybody's mind. How's that? There's one question.
This is probably, well, there are many.
Give me like three.
Okay. One is that there is a lot of mythology and outright lies attached to the Liberty story.
I would believe that.
2, I'll give you an innocuous one. Although the official number of wounded on the ship is listed at 174, out of a crew of, let's say, if it's accurate, 294, so about 300 of the crew, 174 of them applied for some sort of benefits for a physical injury or a mental injury, let's say. But most of them were physical. At that time in the United States history, there was not I'm going to put in for PTSD because I'm mentally injured by this. Not that it couldn't happen, but it just didn't that much. And the reason it didn't was because a lot of these guys at that time saw what their fathers had gone through in World War II, and they weren't going to, disgrace their memory by saying, I couldn't take it. Even though 174 put in for benefits and were wounded, the whole ship was. So all 294 were affected, if not physically, mentally. So that number's wrong. It should be 294. The whole ship. I mean, could you imagine being pummeled for an hour by attack jets and motor torpedo boats? I mean, a lot of them are feeling it to this day. The last surprising fact would be that although this happened to them and they know that it was Israel that did it, almost all of the crew, and even, the crew who have passed, I imagine they felt that way, and I knew many of the ones who have passed, and I've interviewed them. and about 100 have passed out of a crew of about 300 from natural or other causes. Almost all of them are still pro-Israel.
Okay. I think that would be a topic worth digging into. I really do. So, yeah. So what are some of the other, it looks like you've got a ton of books here on so many different topics.
Yes,
and,
we do. We have books and DVDs and audiobooks.
Okay.
And just broadly, Money Tree Publishing broaches the topic of Jews and Jewish power. It's really Jewish power. It's not like going after Jews because they're Jews. It's Jewish power, which is not to be discussed, obviously. If you find in polite company, if you look at Kanye West or anybody, as soon as they mention Jews in anything but a glowing terms, they're gone. And there's something wrong with that. That should be enough to wake people up. How could we carry around the bloodied head of Donald Trump? And that's okay. But as soon as we say something as innocuous as, you know what, I don't think the Jews are an oppressed minority, which Rick Sanchez did, and Rick Sanchez was gone in a matter of seconds. So this is what really attracts me, is the topics that are forbidden, because I know they're forbidden for a reason. And because they're forbidden, and because we have Amendment 1, I'm going to do what I can to keep them, on the front burner and let people see what that's all about. I want to shine the light on them. So
I believe we should have no protected classes of
exactly.
people or thing, and that we look for good or evil, and that's right. It. I mean, when we can distill it down to what the real problem is, the real problem is good against evil. And there are many power structures across the globe.
Yes, of course. But so, Money Tree Publishing focuses on that one power group, right?
Right.
I mean, imagine there could be people who say, you know what, I want to focus on Christian power or Muslim power or, satanic power. And there are. So Money Tree focuses on that. Moonrock Books Publishing focuses on conspiracy topics. Like, did we go to the moon? Or did anybody die in any of these mass shootings? There are a lot of folks who don't believe anything happened.
Okay, so which one was what, Chair? So this is erasing.
Go to that shop, and then click on imprints, and go to MRB.
Okay.
And go to shop again, I guess. Click shop on there. And you'll see some of the books. So JFK, false flags in Europe. Yes.
I love the JFK stuff.
Yes.
And this is something I'm super interested in, all of this, because there is just so much that has been hidden from us.
Right.
And I really do think that we need to look at all things and figure out where this stuff has come from. I really would love to see all of this stuff declassified so that we know, we really know. So you've got one banned by Amazon?
Well, a bunch of them are banned by Amazon.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. If you scroll down, you'll see the other ones that were banned. And there's some that are not even on there because they were banned and forced to be removed. Now, I'm not saying that I agree with any or all of these books, because I don't. But I feel that everyone has a right to read what they want to read.
Well, and that's why I talk to everybody on here too, because everyone has a right to their opinion.
Exactly.
And whether I agree or disagree, I will fight for their right to have that opinion. It doesn't matter.
You are unique. People might pay lip service to that, but they're really not going to go to bat for you. And when the time comes that they might have to.
Well, and I would fight for your right to have that opinion, but I will speak my opinion also. Well, and right. When we take, because that's what we have to do, is that we have to be willing to listen to each other and not have our little castles built up, but listen, because even if
course.
something might be another 2% different than what you think it is, that is a sharpening of the stone just a little bit in the truth world. And
Absolutely.
I think that's so valuable.
And I'll tell you one last thing about the Liberty before I must depart. And this illustrates what you're talking about, right? And it's so vital that folks go the extra step to get the proper information. And as I mentioned earlier, the Liberty is fraught with mythology.
So is 9/11. So is all of the other
right,
stuff. I mean,
exactly. But I'm an expert on the Liberty.
Okay.
So yeah, so people want to believe what they want to believe. So that colors the way that they interpret events. So
every time.
Right, exactly. So we have to be able to overcome that. And that's not easy for everyone. So I had interviewed the helicopter pilot who was the first to reach the Liberty the day after the massacre.
Oh,
and
man.
I used to call it attack or event or, incident. But once I researched it enough, I realized it was an actual massacre. So the 6th Fleet, which actually was nowhere near the Liberty when it was massacred, the next day it made it, and there's a reason why it wasn't, it made it to the Liberty. So helicopter from one of the aircraft carriers reached the Liberty the next day, the morning of June 9th, at like 6 in the morning. And I interviewed that guy a few times, and really nice guy, and we went over pretty much everything. And a few years later, I interviewed the helicopter pilot who was the first to reach the Liberty. So I interviewed 2 guys, 2 helicopter pilots, who claimed to have reached the Liberty, the first to reach the Liberty. Who was telling the truth? I even offered to put them together. One of them declined. I can't say for sure, but if I can't know for sure, and I don't, who was the first helicopter pilot to reach the Liberty? How could we know anything, really? And we can't. And I'm a pretty good interviewer. And I could not figure it out. But both nice guys claim that they were. Could one of them been mistaken? Could one of them be not telling the truth? But we don't even know that. Who was the first helicopter pilot to reach the Liberty? I have no idea. But I talked to them both. I know them both. I talked to both of them several times. Still email with them. But one of them's not right. But can't get to the bottom of it. I think everything's like that. So to come to a conclusion, before you've really dug into it, and I didn't know as much as I do about the Liberty, of course, until I was asked by one of the survivors to dig into it the way that I have. And then it became somewhat of an obsession. But it's good to know this stuff, and it's good to know that, to use that as an example of how careful we need to be when researching anything.
I agree with that. That's absolutely true, is that, you need not be afraid to answer or to ask the hard questions, no matter what it is, because it's just like the NDAs they're having all of our political people sign. This is wrong. This is a public office. What are they trying to hide? Or going back to the election that we had, yesterday, President Trump won. I love President Trump. I really do. I think he's had some really good policies, and that is one horrible job for anyone to take on. I don't care whether you have good intentions or bad intentions. It's a tough job to be in. But I believe that in order to be transparent, and I'm happy he won. I've been an unapologetic Trump supporter because I like a lot of his policies. But in order to go through down the entire process, we need to prove and this is just an election capacity. This isn't looking, because I know where you're going to go with this, and I know what you're thinking just by looking at you to go with this. Okay, I already know this, but the point, just because of the discussion we had, but on a base level discussion, to get to have people understand, they cheated in this election. They cheated
in this one.
They cheated. Yes. They cheated in the 2022 election. They cheated in the 2020 election. They cheated in this election. And there's going to be people that are going to say from the other side that we're not Trump supporters, President Trump supporters, that are going to say, wait a minute, our rights have been violated. In the 2020 election, they refused to do any investigation. If you truly believe in the American process, you have to absolutely uphold the process in the law. There was cheating that happened in our Uokava votes that came back. There are things that we need to look into and say, you know what? I believe we had the vote for President Trump. I really do. But you know what? Let's go ahead and stop trying to hide this shit and dig in there and prove it and open it up so that we can see, because you know what's going to happen when we do that? We're going to see all the cheating that went on and who was cheating and how they cheated and such. But we're also going, if we believe this and we believe in the American process, we're going to say, you know what? I want to prove to you that we won because we got nothing to hide. And I think that that's an important process to go through, because I think President Trump and all the supporters are going to be vindicated and that he actually had the vote, that he had the will of the people. I believe that. And if we believe that, and we're not trying to hide something, then let's throw it out there and prove it.
But they are trying to hide something.
Let's bust this thing open, because President Trump is going to die someday. There's no two ways about it.
That's what they say. They say everybody has to die, right?
Everybody's going to die at some point in time. That's a human construct. We're going to die, right? The point being, it's appointed for all men to die at one point in time. I mean, that's what the Bible says. So the point being is that we have to have a secession plan. We have to have the laws, the processes, the policies to fight against those that would want to cheat the system. And I believe in that. So I believe we need to go through the process.
You Michiganders, you are a tough lot.
We are a tough lot.
You really are. A lot. I think, I was saying this the other day, I think that the state where most of our customers reside is Michigan.
That's right. We are in Michigan, and we are ornery because we are
ornery.
We have the head of the snake sitting right here in Michigan. People want to point everywhere else. They're going to hide where you least.
You mean Gretchen Whitmer?
What's that? No, I mean there is absolutely a system in this state. She's just part of it. Oh. And so is Nessel, and so is Benson, and so is the whole lot of them. There is a system behind this that is absolutely corrupt to the core. And I can say that our discussions on this are going to be very, very interesting. And there's a lot of us here that believe in the when you look at Nessel's background and Benson's background and who they're aligned with, we cannot have protected classes of citizens.
Is Nessel the Attorney General?
Yes.
She's that homosexual Jew?
I believe that you are correct in that assessment.
Yeah. Well, listen, I've got another appointment, but I want to thank you, Donna. I had a great time.
Yeah, well, and I hope you feel, that I'm not a person who's going to jump right on any bandwagon in any point, but I am open to the discussion because we need to get.
I absolutely do, and like I said, I might.
I actually love talking to you. I think this has just been really, really interesting.
Got your blood going, right?
What's that?
It got your blood going.
No, it's one of those things that that I've heard it all. I've probably heard all the arguments on either side of every argument before. But I really
Not
enjoy.
this one?
No, I've heard all the arguments on this.
You've heard this argument too?
Of course I have.
Okay.
And so I absolutely have heard your arguments on all sides of this, as well as the Israeli connections and such. I've absolutely heard the argument.
Jewish connections.
And, you know, I just
Yes.
don't use the word because I differentiate between the people and such.
And one day you might not.
I might not. You never know. But I'm
That's
interested in hearing what you have to say about the liberty, because we've got to get to the bottom of these power structures. We need to be open to talking about it. And honestly, it's very difficult for people if they are holding on to their castles in their heads. Right. We do not want to alienate good people. We want to make sure they know that our battle.
Well, that's right. Well, if they are good people, and if they are good people, then they're not going to be alienated.
We're going to look at this as
right.
We're going to look at people.
Right.
Good.
They're not going to be alienated.
Evil. Good versus evil.
Right. But if they're good, then whatever I say is not going to affect them.
That's not necessarily true. I don't agree with that, because I think there's so many people that are so brainwashed.
Right,
and
of course.
That they may be a good person who's really misled.
Well, then maybe they'll come back in a few years.
And they may want to hear more. But I believe in good people and bad people that are good and evil. And I believe that there's a lot of good people who have been sorely misled. And I really want to welcome them in, no matter.
Well, let's bring them in. We'll bring them in on the Liberty.
That's good. I think that
next
would be
stop, the USS Liberty.
I love that. I love
All
that.
right.
That's great.
Cool.
So I always end with a prayer every show. So we go there, because first and foremost, we have to realize that we serve God here on this nation, and he died for the sins of the world and for everyone when he sent his only begotten son, Jesus Christ. And so with that said, we open our arms to everyone out there and realize that we need to stand together, and you will find love here no matter who you are. Even those that were on the top of this global power structure, I pray for those people. I pray for those people who have absolutely followed evil practices. And I mean, I could go out and name a lot of them, but I don't. I choose not to, because I'm putting this in God's hands, because we want everyone to be saved. We want everyone to turn away from this evil, because our enemy is Satan himself. It is pure evil. And he comes through and he comes through preying on people in various ways. And so when we look at that, the Bible talks about this, and it's very clear that our battle is not with flesh and blood. It's with principalities and powers, wherever they may be. And so we, as the children of God, should be willing to step in and pull people out of their captivity of when they're wrong, or when they've been misled, or where they've taken captive. They may not even know. And if people are willing to come back for good purposes and to serve God, and also to, accept Jesus Christ as their savior, it's like I've been pretty wide out there on who killed Jesus. And that is one of those things that we're going to have to, who silenced him, who needed him gone. It was the power structure that didn't want their power structure gone. And he challenged them. Okay. And they were the ones that killed him. And it wasn't the Romans. It was not the Romans.
The Jews?
It was the religious Jews of the time. Right. And so, but the point being is that we should even pray for these people who are in those positions of power that have been taken captive and think this is the right thing, because it's not. And so I believe in praying for everyone and have them come back to God. And so let's
do a prayer.
Yes. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for guiding us and showing us the truth and the captivity that we have all been under. We have all been wrong. We have all gone our own way, and that we need to turn to you, that you have given us a way to make peace with you on this world, because everyone has sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We acknowledge that, and we love you for the fact that you came to pay the penalty for our sins by giving your only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. And we know that everyone is someone that you absolutely came to die for, whether they accept your gift or not. We want to be here for your good purposes, to stand in the gap, realizing that people have absolutely been taken captive in the way that we think. We've all done things that are wrong. And we pray for the greatest sinners on this earth, no matter that have created the greatest evil or have done the greatest evil, who have gone after the children, who have done horrible things to our children and to our posterity. And we ask that you would destroy any and all things that have created chaos, that are lies of the enemy, which is Satan himself, and that you would bring everyone to a eternal relationship with you through Jesus Christ. We love you so very much. We love the fact that all truth is found in you, and that you can guide and protect us as we walk forward into the future in whatever it is. We want to know the truth. And so thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for being with us. And we want you to know that you've been a great friend to us, and we want to be a friend to you, and that we love you so very much. And we love all of your children, humanity, no matter how they have been taken captive. And we ask that you would help us to have grace for each other and bring truth forward. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. So there you go. May your favor rest strongly upon Dave today and all that he is called to do in your name. In Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. So there we go. I pray that you be blessed, and everyone. I love that. I mean, we all have our own gifts and what we talk about, and I'm thankful for you. I really am. I'm thankful for your ability to have free speech, and the things that I agree with and the things that I disagree with. I'm thankful for you, and I'm thankful for your bravery to talk about hard subjects for people. Very thankful.
Thank you. And I'm thankful that you're thankful.
With that said,
yes,
I'm going to go there. So this is that part of the show, boys and girls, where I go bing, 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 bing. Go to brandenburgforgovernor.com, because I'm the best non-conceder who has ever not conceded in the history of the United States of America. And I want to have a discussion someday with the rightful president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump. And he needs to wear cowboy boots, because we're going to have discussions on very difficult subjects that we need to discuss. So with that said, God bless you all. God bless all those whom you love, and God bless America. Make it a great day. You know what? We're here to serve God. That's our highest purpose, is to serve God Almighty. And whatever he calls us to do, in however he calls us, we're willing to go in that path. And if you don't have a good example out there, be one, because we are all brothers and sisters. He created this world. He created each one of us. And we want to treat other people as we want to be treated. And so go out and be kind to each other. Always speak truth. But realize we are a hurting world. We're a hurting nation. People make mistakes, and that we need to love them where they are, no matter whether we agree or disagree with them. We are do it in the ways that, and treat them in the way that you would want to be treated. But never back down. Never back down away from a righteous fight. Be very careful to identify the enemy when you're in these battles too, because that's an important part of being human. And be thankful for Dave saying things that are challenging a non-touchable establishment, because we need to listen to what he has to say. I've listened to both sides of this argument, and he is going to make some very inflammatory statements, but there's going to be a lot of truth in a lot of the things that he brings forward that we have to challenge. And that's a good thing. And so I'm surprised the ADL hasn't come after me yet, because I've already talked about a lot of these subjects. And
give them time. It took them a while to.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I've said that.
Give me my award. You can see that award on the Money Tree Publishing website.
I've said that many times. It's amazing. Yes. And watch the ADL come after me, because they should not have protected speech or a protected status. They should not have the right to close any of us down. You have the right to free speech.
Well, that's
no one should control that, no matter what area they come from. And I'll stand on that as the Constitution. But you know what? That is an entity that needs to be challenged. And we will defend everyone's right to free speech. And this is a no censorship platform. If you don't like it, this is maybe going to be uncomfortable. Well, no, I'm going to say you are in the right place.
If you don't like it, you're in the right.
If they don't like it, whether they like it or they don't like it,
they're always in the right place.
You're in the right place because I will defend your right to have your opinion. Okay. And your ability to express that opinion. Even if I disagree, and that's not to you, that's to anyone.
Right.
Anyone out there, I will defend your right to your opinion and your free speech. And this is a no censorship platform. And this always puts people in a position of being uncomfortable. And that's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
So have a great day.
You too.
And we'll be back with the Liberty. And thank you so much for coming on. And thank you for listening to me and in my ability or my bent to unify people. So
absolutely. Thank you for listening to me. And it was great to meet you. And thank you to Casey. He's a great guy. He doesn't quit.
He's greatly inflammatory. That's what I love, Casey. He challenges.
He's not inflammatory enough. I'm going to have to talk to him about that.
He's a nice person.
He's a great guy. And thank you. We'll see you on the next episode on the USS Liberty.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. I have an architect on tomorrow that will be debunking 9/11, which is interesting. We'll talk to you later.